Hi, this is John Carey. I'm one of the marketing managers for Cengage Learning Southwestern Publishing. And what I wanted to do today is just take about 5 minutes and talk about the new edition of Irvin Tucker's book. It's called Economics for Today. It's been a very popular book for a variety of reasons, but I'm going to walk you through a chapter today to show you specifically why this book has been so popular and why it might work pretty well in your classroom. You'll notice I have the splits here. It's also, of course, available in a one-volume hardback micro and macro book. Let's just walk through a chapter here. And the chapter I chose because many instructors tell me that the supply and demand material is really important. If students don't get a good grasp on that, the semester could be a real long one for them. So what I did is I took the supply and demand chapter, and what I want to do is walk you through this chapter because we often tell people that the Tucker book is probably our most pedagogically rich book. We like to say at Cengage Learning it's our most hand-holding book. It's good for classrooms where students are of all levels of skills and preparation. You may have some students who can handle the material without any problem at all. Then you may have some students who have a little bit of trouble. Maybe their reading comprehension is not up to where it should be. Maybe they're having trouble with getting a handle on graphs. So what this book does, it does not talk down to any students who may be at a little higher level. All the economics is there, but what it does in its pedagogical design and system is take the students who may be a little bit less adept and lead them. So if you notice, we open the chapter, and of course here's the supply and demand chapter. It will give a little bit of background, and then of course, like many books do, kind of a checkpoint here. In this chapter you will learn. What we'll do now is let's look at one of the strengths of Tucker's book. You'll notice the graphs. You'll notice that they are large. The grid lines are in the graphs, and the curves use primary colors. So as you can see, these are very easily understood. There's no question about where the points are. If we switch over to a page, you'll see these graphs. And one thing that Irvin Tucker does is you'll notice underneath are these boxes. These are what we call causation chain boxes. They're a bit like a flow chart. It tells students, okay, here's where we start. Something happens and the graph changes, and this is where we end up. So it gives students not only a graphical representation, but kind of a flow chart explanation as well. One thing you'll notice on this page is they will have conclusion boxes, and these are throughout the book, and some of them come one right after the other. What we learned was oftentimes students have trouble reading long passages. So what Tucker does is he'll stop a student and then just reframe what he just said to them within just a sentence or two. This is what we just read. This is the concept we just read. So students can stop, take a breath, understand what they just read. Let's move on. Again, another example of these clear graphs. Here's another one. This is a really nice representation of what's going on in supply and demand. You'll notice down here at the bottom of this page is something called a checkpoint. At various times in the chapter, what Tucker will do is he'll stop the students and he'll ask them a question. The answers to the questions are at the end of the chapter, but what students will do then is, if they cannot answer the question, they know that they really should go back a little bit, read the concept again, and not move forward until they really understand it with the right answer to the question. Okay. You'll notice, again, the conclusion statements, the checkpoints, the graphs. Oftentimes, we'll get a question of what does your book do as far as getting students to think like an economist or have critical thinking. Critical thinking is often really important across the disciplines. Well, what we'll do in each chapter is we'll have a You're the Economist box, and it will give students a scenario, then it will ask them some questions or to expound on some things. Not yes and no questions, not fill in the blank questions, but questions where they really have to explain the concept that they just read. Again, it gets students to think critically. As we move along, you'll notice that there are global economics boxes. Many schools are stressing the importance of understanding economics in terms of the world economy, and we make sure that we have that material right in the book. Again, here's another nice graphic representation. You'll see the causation chains down here. Quantity supplied exceeds quantity demanded. That leads to surplus. Price decreases to equilibrium price. So you see that nice transition there on the flow chart. Big graph again. Okay, that leads us to the end of the chapter. You'll notice there's one last checkpoint here. Here's the summary. It's interesting because many books will just have a summary. What Tucker does is he makes sure, where appropriate, that he puts the graph that the summary is talking about right there next to it, so students don't have to flip back, lose their place, in order to see the summary in terms of the graphs. Another thing that Tucker does is he'll list the summary and conclusion statements that came through the chapter, so students have one place that they can study from. He'll give the checkpoint answers. Those are those little quizzes that he gives within the chapter. And then this is really nice. Professors say that their students really like this. What Tucker does at the end of every chapter, he will give them a chapter quiz. So students will be able to see how they're doing. And one last thing I wanted to show, at the end of each part, Tucker has what we call a roadmap. And what this does is it takes each chapter, it asks them some questions, so in the context of all the chapters together, students can make connections and make sure that they understand stuff. Well, I hope that helped. Again, if you want pedagogy, if you want an easily understood book, and a very popular book, Tucker. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye now.